Hello everybody and welcome back to Juno New Origins, where we've been working on this planet visitor, and it's a lag machine, but it's a cheap lag machine. So there is that. That is a good thing. At this point, it's pretty much ready to send on its first mission, and this is going to sound strange, but I would like to send it to Silero. Specifically a moon of Silero that we haven't been to yet. So let's go ahead and launch this. We know it's going to have some audio issues, but we know this is less than $10 million for the entire package. That's really not bad for what this thing does. So that is phenomenal. And at this point, yeah, this frame rate, not great. What we need to do is we need to mute this master volume because it's going to be really obnoxious to listen to. So we're not going to listen to that at all. In fact, maybe we would be better off if we... Let's see, we've got the music volume and the sound volume. Let's put the master volume at 50. And let's just drop the sound volume to 0. Let's see if that works. So now at least we have some background music, but we don't have to listen to that stuttering sound that this ridiculous number of engines makes. So let's go ahead and... Yeah. Apparently that also stops the music. But at least it's not stuttering. So you can see that this thrust to weight is very, very low. And we knew that that would be the case. The question is, where does it get to, right? We bumped up the amount of burn time that this has. Did I very briefly hear a little bit of music there? Maybe. The game really struggles with this, I believe this is like 821 engines or something like that. It's kind of ridiculous that this is the cheapest option that exists, but it is. So we're up to 1.34 thrust to weight right now, and I mean, what are we at in mission elapsed time? This is 9:51:57, which is definitely not mission elapsed time. And I feel like we've definitely gone further than 7 years and 195 days in this. The next question is, are we going to be able to hold attitude here? Now, that's actually a significant question because we don't have the thrust to weight that we had previously. So we're going pretty slowly here, actually. That means that our fins are less able to both stabilize and redirect our directionality here. So with this decreased thrust to weight, we may end up needing to have a situation where we are going up more thoroughly until our speed builds up. That's a possibility. I'm keeping an eye on our pitch yaw situation here. We are building up speed, and that is going to increase our control authority. And it looks like we probably have that under control. We're not maxed out on the pitch and yaw anymore. So I think we have it under control. That's looking good. Okay, I just clicked on this like seconds ago, and it has not registered. The game is responding, but I can't click on these tanks. I'm going to assume that this number is accurate. It probably is at this point. It should be accurate. So we've got about 39% fuel left, about 1 kilometer per second here. We're still working on punching up through this atmosphere. So we're currently at an apoapsis of about 9 kilometers. 2.4 thrust to weight at this point, and that thrust to weight is going to get high. So that's absolutely understood. It's really weird to have essentially our center core here is a solid fuel kick stage. That's essentially what we've got going on here. It feels very strange to use a solid fuel kick stage, but I mean, that does happen in reality. I believe that's how the Rocket Lab kick stage works. Now that I think about it. I think that's solid fueled. I'd have to double check that. Ah, we're losing attitude again. So you can see we're struggling to hold this, but we're not maxed out on our yaw and our pitch at this time, but we are still losing attitude. This is surprising to me. I did not expect to be losing attitude at this point in the flight because our orbital velocity, or rather not our orbital, but our overall velocity is significantly high. That said, our apoapsis is up high enough that this is actually kind of okay. I don't mind that. I'll just continue burning at this point, and this is about where I want to be in terms of angling. So I'm not going to make any changes there at this time. We're going to be ditching these engines very shortly, and the game will run so much better as soon as we do. Okay. So now what we need to do is we need to turn the sound back on. So this was previously at, I believe, 33. So we'll do that. And there we go. Okay, I want to be at a pitch of 45 degrees right now. That's a big attitude loss. We appear to have it under control. Ish. That's a big attitude loss. Very interesting. Very, very interesting. It's going to put us in an inclination that we don't necessarily want to be in. We are struggling to control attitude at this point, and I think it is because we're too high up in the atmosphere for the control surfaces here to be particularly effective. So we're relying on our tiny little reaction wheel up here at this point. So I want to bring this down to be here. We will attempt to make our way over to that. But this is going to put us in a wacky inclination, for sure. So this is definitely a concern that we probably want to address. I mean, we got a lot of orbital velocity there, no doubt about that. Now we're going to be fine, of course, because why is this Wyvern engine? Oh, of course, we're not throttled up. Okay, now why is this Wyvern engine not firing? This should be firing at this time. If we stage, we're going to have this problem. So we might have a staging issue here. We're going to have to pull this back. I don't know why that Wyvern engine isn't firing, but that would have made it into orbit. Our main issue there was definitely the attitude control issue. And to that end, I'm going to bring this up to a 0.5 meter, like that. That'll add a lot of payload mass, to be clear. But this is going to be primarily focused on gyros, and that should help that situation. It'll be overkill once we get a little further out. So that is understood. So we've got a delta V here of 9.74 kilometers per second in theory. And I want to check, yeah, that's all of these stages here. The Wyvern is definitely here with the interstage. So why didn't it fire? This is Methalox. And the Wyvern engine, I believe, burns Methalox. That is a blue engine, so that should be correct. Okay. Let's put this out on the pad. And of course, we're going to have some sound issues again. I really wish there was a more cost-efficient way to make these SRBs, but there isn't. Okay, so let's throttle this on up and launch this again. I'm going to put us at about a 70-degree pitch once more. Actually, I'm going to make it be at about an 80-degree pitch. Okay, let's get that sound situation solved. There we go. And I'm going to put this in 2x, and off we go. And now things are going to be a little spicy in 2x because the frame rate is going to be very bad, but I do want to get us off the ground and moving as quickly as we can. So this is going to eat into our delta V in these stages. We'll see how that ends up going. It shouldn't affect this stage very much, but it will definitely affect this one, and it will absolutely affect this stage. We'll see if it's too much. But if we need the gyros for ascent, well, we could put gyros here, in theory, and then down here under the interstage. Because our main problem is, once we get up high enough, then our issue is not so much the fact that we are lacking fins, which we are a little bit. But the issue at that point is that we are lacking gyroscopes, because there's not enough air for the fins to grab onto. Now, I see that we are having our trajectory drift here. Yeah, we're definitely off axis. Okay, let's pull this back. And I want to do a couple of things here. First off, I want to put a gyroscope on top of... I'm actually thinking right now about doing this. So another set of fins out here, and then a gyroscope right here. It'll be a kind of centrally located gyroscope, which would be a little bit odd, but that would be the overall idea. So this is a little long right now. I'd like to bring this down to like 0.5 meter or so. It's going to be a pretty small gyroscope. That is not the angle I was looking for. Okay, let's do that. And I want to check in on this gyroscope here. So this is 39 out of 100%. Increase the power of the gyroscope at the cost of higher electricity usage. Okay, we'll leave it at 100% for now, see how it feels. That'll help matters a little bit, and I'm actually going to reduce this guy back down in length to 0.2 meters. Because that's going to be overkill, and I'd like to not have that there, if at all possible. So that'll help matters a little bit. It will cut into our overall distance that we can travel, but not by a huge margin. So that should be reasonably fine. Okay, let's put this at 80 degrees, and let's see how that feels. So right at 80, make sure that we're going eastward. We are, looks good. I'm going to put this in 2x, and let's let the slideshow begin. Excellent. Now, to be honest, I am not surprised that this is an absolute slideshow. And it is. It 100% is a slideshow. That's for sure. To be fair, in this situation, KSP would be at least this much of a slideshow, if not more. This is frankly ridiculous. Speaking of frankly ridiculous, I'm looking at our battery usage right now. As long as we have enough battery for ascent, what we need to remember is that we have an electric fuel pump here. And you can see as we start to overshoot this, our battery is dipping. So we'll keep an eye on that battery situation. And we're building up speed here, which means that these fins are going to be getting more and more effective as well. This gyroscope being centrally located is going to be very strange for it, but it's okay. So yeah, I'm just watching our battery plummet at this point. It's being used up by this gyroscope attempting to counteract this situation. Are we off axis right now? Now we're pretty on axis. So that's not an issue. It's just the pitch at this point, which is kind of a combined pitch and yaw. If we look at the nav ball, you can see what our target point is and where we are. This is our target point down here. This is where we are. Yeah, it definitely needs some work. No doubt about that. It is improving at this juncture, though. So the question is, okay, we are at like 15% battery. Yeah, that's going down fast. Okay, so we are now out of battery. And you can see we immediately start losing attitude here. This is what we get if we are trying to do this entirely with our fins at this point. This is the attitude control that we get. So that gyroscope was definitely doing a lot. A whole lot. Okay. So we're about to lose these SRBs, and we are in some we're in a pretty insane tumble right now. Okay. That was a terrible that was a terrible detachment. That's understood. I want to make sure this Wyvern engine is actually functioning. It's still not functioning. So why is this Wyvern engine not working? Well, in this case, it's probably because we have no battery, and I'm guessing that was the case before. Keep in mind, this is an electric pump engine. So if we have no battery, then that's going to be a problem. Okay, let's pull this back, and battery is clearly a concern here. So what I want to do right now is I want to add in a small amount of battery here. So that's going to be interesting how that ends up playing out. I want to make sure that we are pulling from, and this is going to be somewhere around 0.5 meter of battery in each of these locations. That might be overkill. We'll see what the battery levels here are like when this goes away. Now, I want this to look a little different. Let's see here. Texture can be like... There's a lot of texture options here. Okay, we can have it be like this. Sure, it looks slightly different. And striped, normal. Those are the only options. Okay, noted. So this is currently set to solid. I want this to be battery. And I want this to be a higher priority to be drained first. So these are going to be priority 1 tank, or priority 1 batteries. And this is going to be a priority 0 battery. So as you can see, this is 11.8 kilowatt hours. Each of these are 745 kilowatt hours. That is rather a lot. I think this is wildly overkill for what we need. So I'm going to bring this down to 0.2 meters. Now those are 228 kilowatt hours, or 288 kilowatt hours, which should still be more than enough. So let's put this out on the pad, and we'll keep an eye on our battery usage. That gyroscope really sucked down the battery life of our initial battery, but this is so much more battery life available. So let's put this at 80, and let's throttle this up, and off we go. 2x speed here, not that, you know, that's going to help the frame rate. But let's get through this initial burn nice and quickly. And the question is, how much overkill is this on the batteries? I'm guessing that's going to be quite a lot of overkill. I also want to check in on the battery up top here. I want this to be not all tanks in set, selected tank. Okay, so we can see this is at 100%. And then if we select this battery here, it's not wanting to go. It was selected there briefly. It was also at 100%. Okay. I wonder if we just haven't drained it enough yet. This is a lot more power, right? And it's going to be draining from all 4 batteries. Hang on. Let's pull this down to paused. This is still very laggy, even whilst paused. Noted. So we're at 288 kilowatts here still. That's noted. I'm going to pin this open. And I'd like to select this gyroscope here. I want to be investigating how it's doing in its power usage. Okay, so we can see it's using about 5 kilowatts. Noted. So this is wildly overkill on the amount of battery. That's for sure. Tremendously, wildly overkill. That said, we are still drifting off here. So let's pull this back. We know for a fact that we have the ability to boost up the power of that gyroscope for increased power usage. Increased power usage, not necessarily a problem, considering what we just witnessed. So let's bring this up to 250%. There we go. And this is still under... Yeah, this is under 9 million at this point for launch costs, so not bad on that front. The main question now is, how are we doing on getting into orbit, right? Well, that gyroscope is a lot more powerful now, and let's just put ourselves about here, and let's go. Okay, so I would like to have these batteries pinned open, if at all possible. Just waiting for the smoke to clear. That makes things a lot smoother once we clear the smoke. All that alpha blending. Okay, there we go. That should improve things significantly. So here we see this particular battery. Now I want to look at this battery up here. There we go. And then we can also look at our gyroscope here. So we can see we are struggling to hold this attitude still. Given what we've got going on here, this is unsurprising. But what I want to do is I want to verify that we're not draining this power, which is definitely verified at this point. Now we need to build up a bit of speed. So my question is, are we draining power off of one particular battery pack here? I assumed it would drain off of them simultaneously, but that may not be the case. So we've definitely got some roll picked up here. There's no doubt about that. We are not really working very hard on combating that roll. We are a bit, but we're mostly trying to handle this pitch. Okay, so our battery just dropped to 99%. I want to check in here. Actually, I want to pause the game real quick. Okay, game is paused. I want to look at this battery. If the game will let me select it. There we go. Okay, so this is 285 kilowatt hours, 99%. If we check this battery here, same. So it is draining simultaneously. Good to know. And we can see this is draining at 29.5 kilowatts. Okay, so this is still wildly overkill on the batteries. That's for sure. We can back off on those at least half, probably more. We can probably get rid of 3/4 of those batteries. I also want to make sure that we're draining solid fuel from here. We might not be able to drain solid fuel. We might have to move the batteries up into these hemispherical tanks. That's actually an interesting point. Does solid fuel flow through the batteries? No, it does not. Okay, so that is good to know. Okay, so let's pull this back then. We now know that there are some significant issues there, and how I want to address those is very basic, to be honest. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to detach the hemispheres. I'm going to detach the battery tank. I'm going to move this up by like 0.2 to compensate. I'm going to put the hemispheres back on, and then I'm going to put a single battery here. instead of having 4 batteries like this. And this will be a better place for it anyway, because it's less likely to be thrown away. So that will be fine. Let's double check our staging, make sure that that's all looking good. Yes, that looks correct. I don't know if we've solved the issue with our Wyvern engine not launching, or rather not firing yet, but let's go ahead and put this out on the pad and see how this goes. Okay. So that gyroscope definitely eats a lot of battery life, right? No doubt about that. I want to pin open this battery here. And let's go ahead and launch this. I also want to select our command disk eventually. That's a hemisphere. I want to select the command disk. There we go. So we can keep an eye on this and see how that's going to end up going. So this is definitely very, very slow, but we're getting really close to having this design be finalized. It's, I guess we could call this the slideshow viewer. And perhaps we should. Okay, so we've got this taken off at this point, and the question is, how's this attitude control going to look? Well, it's going to be a little awkward here. We need to build up our surface speed a fair amount in order for these fins to be particularly effective. And then the gyroscopes, well, they're going to be much more effective later on in the flight, right? So let's bring this on up. We just dropped to 99%, so we can see that we are draining our batteries correctly. That's looking good. This no longer needs to be pinned. Beautiful. So now I want to take a look at the nav ball, see how we're doing here. Yeah. So our yaw is chilling at about 70%. That's understood. We're fairly on axis here, but it's not perfect. That said, as we build up speed, we're going to certainly have this change somewhat. And we should have plenty of battery charge, so I'm not too concerned about that. That roll is concerning, though. And now we've got some yaw oscillation tossed into the roll, but I think we have it under control now that we've sped up enough for these fins to really start contributing. As you can see, the roll is much more under control. We largely have our attitude stabilized, but we're not able to really pull it back to where we want it to be. And you might ask, where do we want it to be right now? Well, our apoapsis is good enough that I'd like to put this, in theory, at 45. But that creates us quite a lot of tumble immediately. We'll try to hold this attitude, but I don't know how that's going to go. Attitude control on liftoff is the main issue right now. And if we were using more expensive engines, this would not be a problem at all. We would just use engine gimbaling. Unfortunately for us, we're not using that. So there's that. Okay, so we're in this center core now, and that's going to accelerate us up quite a lot. I'm noting our apoapsis is currently at about 60. And I want to drop this guy down to about 15 degrees. We're much more controllable right now. I'm not going to call this super controllable, but it is more controllable. Okay, keeping an eye on this apoapsis. The apoapsis looks good. We want to be building up maximal horizontal speed at this point, and this is going to get us pretty close to orbital velocity, but I don't know that it's going to get us exactly to it. No, it's not. It's going to be short a little bit, but that's expected. That gyroscope definitely making things more controllable. No doubt about that. Okay, so now the question is, oh, this is actually working. Beautiful. This engine is functional now. So that is great. The question is, if we were to do a planned burn at apoapsis and do something along the lines of this, What would that end up looking like for DV? So that's about 800 DV. Understood. We have 3.18 kilometers per second in this, so we'd definitely like to get a little bit more out of that first stage. There are a couple of things we can do about that. We could combine together the two stages instead of having the kick stage, which would be awkward because it would burn out. The center stage would burn out first. It would be a whole thing. We could increase the burn time of the takeoff stages. That's a theoretical option, but our thrust to weight would become a concern. For sure. So that is definitely understood. This is viable at this point, but the real question is how much craft DV would we have left at this point? So, I mean, we would have about 2 kilometers per second left in this, and then I think this was like 4 or something like that. It'd be decent, for sure. At any rate, we're going to need to pull this back. I think that I do want to increase the power of that first stage a little bit, and I'm not sure exactly how we're going to go about doing that, but that is something for next episode. You can leave your offerings to the engagement gods in the form of likes, comments, subscribes, and bell ringings, and a very special thank you to all of the channel members for making this video possible, including ALS Gamer, Andy McGar, Dark Horse, Xenocyte, Upper Cumberland Gamers, Nick Smarty, Dimitri H, Punching the Microphone, The Lounge STL, and all the rest. And of course, you. Thank you for watching. If you'd like to support the channel, you can click the join button down below the video, and as always, I will see you all next time.